Dr. Mutulu, you're still under oath again.
We are ready to proceed, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Commissioner, we are at page 208, misnumbered paragraph 467. Indeed. Perhaps we can call it 622.1.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms. Menye was about to go on a spending spree under the so-called modernization of the PIC IT platform, similar to SARS-1, I guess. The first such was the purchase of telecommunication conferencing facility for 12 offices at the cost of 12 million. This was followed by an attempt to get a 1 billion rand budget for the modernization approved. The CFO and myself did not support this budget as we believe that the PIC can spend no more than 200 million in 3 to 5 years to upgrade its IT platform to a world-class standard. Our refusal must have angered both Ms. Menye, The relationship between her and the CFO was very tense. I fully supported the CFO as she has been frugal with the finances of the corporation. Mr. Alvin Shiel and Mr. Sandile Sibia's issues have been dealt with by Mr. Polwan and Ms. Mori in their statements to this commission. Mr. Martinez de Jong's issues were dealt with by Mr. Roy Raja in his statement on Daybreak Farms. I must also point out that Mr. de Jong reported to Ms. Claire Bozetti. Ms. Claire Bozetti was then the head of Isibaya at that time. In fact, she's the one who appointed him. I had a short interaction with him, Mr. de Jong, during the organizational restructuring, and then subsequently he reported to Mr. Raja. The common thread amongst most of the witnesses claiming victimization is the narrative that I'm a bad person. It is what is called mobbing, in my view. It occurs as an emotional abuse in the workplace, such as ganging up by co-workers, subordinates, or superiors to force someone out of workplace through rumor, innuendo, intimidation, humiliation, discrediting, and isolation. James Nogu starts the rumor and innuendos, and the media sustains the attack. These employees are less than 5% of PIC staff complement. I think I have the PIC to success with humility. I've led the PIC to success with humility and enjoyed the support of most of PIC employees and majority of directors at the PIC.
Don't have any further questions there, Mr. Commissioner.
I have just a few questions, Mr. Commissioner. Dr. Mutulu, with regard to Mrs. Menye, I have spoken to her when she testified, and I've again checked with her this afternoon after 2, just before 2 when we started. My instructions are that you are not correct with regard to the purchase of a teleconferencing system for 12 offices at a cost of 12 million. She tells me, and it was confirmed by the IT department, that was already approved before she joined the PIC in December 2016.
Commissioner, I would like the Commission to check with finance. They will be able to provide full information of the payments, the system when it was acquired, and the payments thereof.
The second point is that she never, according to her, applied or attempted to apply for a billion budget for the modernization. She says it was an amount of 500 million over a period of 5 years. I'm not trying to cross-examine you, I'm just putting Mrs. Menye's version to you that you can comment on that.
Okay. My understanding is that she was applying for a billion over a 5-year period, 3 to 5 year period. 1 billion over 3 to 5 year period.
Thank you. Thank you. And then, with regard to the common threat you're talking about, my understanding is not that the employees are referring to you as a bad person, but the impression is that in the PIC, if you don't toe the line and do what you're told to do, you're in trouble. And on the evidence led thus far in this commission, I can talk about a golden thread when I talk about the former CEO, Mr. Masilela, Mr. Ntuane, Dr. Kaba, Ms. Menye, senior people leaving the PIC under a cloud. And the golden thread is, as soon as you don't toe the line, there is a whistleblower report or allegations of misconduct, you hold before a disciplinary, and that's the end of you. Can you comment on that?
Can I just make sure, I think you mentioned Masilela.
Yes. I mentioned Mr. Masilela, the former CEO.
I'm probably mixing Maisela with Masilela.
It is Mr. Masilela, the former CEO.
Commissioner, I can't comment on Mr. Masilela. I think he reported to the board, so the board at that time would be in a better position to explain themselves on this matter.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you. You knew at the time there was a board investigation.
Yes, that's the one I'm talking about, that they conducted. I think I did talk about it in this commission, you know. And Commissioner, the other issues he calls, I mean, they talk about the golden thread, which I don't think it's golden the way I see it, you know. And most of the people who came here to testify around the CEO in particular, I mean, I'm talking about myself, who claimed that, you know, I don't lead, I rule, you know, I'm powerful. Some of the statements were even made by the commissioners themselves, which I don't agree with, because I've always run that organization, you know, in an open and transparent manner, you know, the way I think, you know, and I've allowed staff to express their views, to be innovative, to contribute without any fear. And I don't want to say I'm not aware of all the other challenges that they have in the organization that we haven't been able to deal with to their satisfaction, unfortunately. But from where I sit, I would say I've tried my best to run the organization in a proper manner. Of course, I'm not doing it alone. There are other players. And if important players in this are not assisting, are not helping in driving the values of the organization, then we pick up problems, as we have seen.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
I'm just a bit worried about you mentioning the commissioners. I don't know whether I heard you correctly that we might have coined some terms or names
No, I was
with
raising,
reference to you.
yes, I was raising the issue of being called powerful, you know. I think that was mentioned, and we spoke about it yesterday, I guess. I remember when in closing, and I think we found each other on that. I'm comfortable, but those were the issues for me.
Mr. Commissioner, perhaps I can assist. I initiated this debate on powerful, having the CIO and the CEO in one position is powerful, and it was picked up by the Commission. but not on the basis that you are powerful.
Okay, I'm all right with that.
Yeah, just in terms of paragraph 467, and if I can recall, Ms. Menya said that the budgeting, the budget or the budgeting process, that you collect pricing material, you do a budget, but it's not something which is approved, but you collect information about the systems and whatever the equipment and the pricing. And it's then after that, then you can present a proper budget. So I thought she said it was not really something to approve, but she was pre-planning that particular budget.
Maybe
you
there
recall
was,
that, yeah?
Maybe
Can
there
you
was a
recall?
misunderstanding, because one thing I know is that she was on this IT modernization project for a while, and she's presented to relevant committees seeking approval for the capital expenditure.
You are saying it's 1 billion rand.
Yes, as far as I can remember, it was
Yes,
1
and
billion
yes.
that she was asking for over a period of time.
Okay, and it went to sort of approval committees.
Yes, I remember it went through to the main committee that deals with IT, ICT, TC. Yes.
Okay, all right. So okay. So well, she said something different, but it's fine. I think we can check that. Okay.
Just for record purposes, I think that is 6231, that paragraph you were referring to.
Yes.
It's renamed, yeah.
It's a typo. Apologies.
623, 6.1.
Yes.
Okay.
If there's no further questions, Commissioners, we can proceed to read the paragraph 626, which is investigations by the Public Protector.
Mr. Commissioner,
Is there anything that can be done with this?
we cannot proceed with this noise. Can we have a 5-minute adjournment that we can attend to that?
Must be James.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Commissioner, these are investigations by the Public Protector. The Public Protector has conducted several investigations, the allegations made by various people and so-called whistleblowers. The table is provided in the next page, provides a full chronology of investigations, which to date have been put to work under, that have put PIC work under a lot of pressure. I have personally suffered physically, emotionally, and mentally under these pressures. The stress that I have had to endure has also deeply affected my wife and children. I have provided a comprehensive response to these requests. The Public Protector investigations cover the period from Mr. Jonas as the chairperson, Mr. Buthelezi, and Mr. Gungubele. The PIC has not received feedback from the Public Protector on the status of some of these reports.
You don't need to read the actual reports, Dr. Majila. I just want to ask you, though, when you say the Public Protector, there have been two. There's been Ms. Badonzela and Ms. Nkwabani. When you say the Public Protector has conducted several investigations,
Yeah.
is that one or the other or both?
It's the office, starting with the previous public protector and the current. So some of the work has been carried over to the new public protector.
No further questions.
I have no questions.
Question here is that, is there something maybe you are trying to tell us, or you are just saying there was just some pressure, or, I mean, is there something else, I mean, that you are trying to convey maybe? Because I couldn't think it through properly.
I was simply saying that the PIC has been under investigation. Some of these issues, that the commission is dealing with here, has been dealt with elsewhere. You know, there are other parties who have been working on them, in other words. You know. But we haven't received feedback
Any feedback?
on some of them.
Yeah, okay.
The only feedback, if I remember, is the one on Sibia about this 32 million, if my memory serves me well. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we must think about this and see whether we can talk to the public protector then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Advocate?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, through you, we have tried to get some cooperation with the public protector without success.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But are you able to say which matters are being dealt by the public protector that we are dealing with?
If I'm quick, I think there's SNS refinery, as an example. The issue of bonuses has been dealt with. The whole Jim Snugu allegations, Commissioner.
Sec oil? Sec oil?
Sakwile as
Would be
well.
there, yeah.
In the past, Sakwile has been looked at. The allegations of Mr. Holomisa, or the complaint by Mr. Holomisa.
Yes. I saw that. The Afric oil, I think.
Yes,
The
African
Afric
oil.
oil with Zwelim Kize, Afric oil.
That's right, yeah.
And then the SNS.
The SNS, and as I said, the whole James Nugu allegations from MST to bonus payments,
Okay.
to victimization, to promotion, that lengthy one, and my so-called son, and so on, all Litlo la Litlo, they were all investigated by the public protector.
Mr. Commissioner, the complaints lodged with the public protector are all covered by the terms of reference of this commission. All of them.
I think we're getting to recommendations. Are there some things that you need to highlight there? Yeah, we'll go back to transactions. I just want to finish this part.
Okay. Thanks,
So
Commissioner. I'll go
just
to...
give me a moment, just give me a moment. What do council suggest? Do we go to transactions now, or shall we simply complete recommendations?
I think we'll go to transactions.
Yeah.
We can start off with transactions, Mr. Commissioner.
Let's do that.
So we go back to page 136, paragraph 387, dealing with the independent media group and Sagarmatha transactions. 136, paragraph 387.
Yeah, we can start. Are you fine?
Thank you, Commissioner. The chairman of Sekunjalo Consortium, Sekunjalo, Dr. Iqbal Save, approached me in early 2012 to test if the PIC could fund Sekunjalo to acquire 100% of the business of Independent News Media South Africa, Pty Ltd, which we'll call INMSA, from Independent News Media PLC, INMM. I advised him to provide me with a formal investment information memorandum, which I passed on to the private equity team to evaluate. I must stress that once I have handed over a transaction to the deal team, I don't get involved in the transaction until the transaction team advises me that they are ready to take the transaction to the next stage. In terms of the due diligence practice, the PIC did not issue any letter of support because a competitive bidding process was being run by Investec on behalf of the seller, INM. On 26 July 2012, Sekunjalo made an unsolicited offer of 2.2 billion to INM, the seller. The price was based on the 2011 audited financial statement on an earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization EBITDA basis of 373 million rands, South African rands, and an enterprise value, EV, EBITDA of multiple of 5.9 times. The seller did not entertain the offer, and it expired accordingly. Sekunjalo was not the only bidder that approached the PIC, albeit the first to do so. In other words, approached the PIC for financing. The other was Blueprint Consortium, led by Mr. Gruvin Shabeling and advised by HSBC. I understand there were 20 bidders in total. A Chinese group advised by Standard Bank, Mr. Patrice Musipe, Mr. Robert Gumede, a journalist at INMSA, a group of journalists at INMSA led by Ms. Nkroti, and the Gupta family through the New Age TNA, as well as various private equity groups. Sekunjalo won the preferred bidder status, following which they commenced with due diligence. A potential competition breach was identified, and furthermore, the normalized EBITDA for year 31st December 2012 came down to 272, which was below forecast. Sekunjalo revised its offer to 2 billion. The PIC then issued Sekunjalo with an expression of support subject to PIC internal processes, including due diligence by the PIC. Sekunjalo made a proposal for the PIC to breach the 2 billion consideration required while it was concluding a capital raise from other investors, including Interacom, a Chinese media company. Once the capital was raised, the PIC will have an exposure of less than 1 billion, inclusive of the 25% equity. I now discuss the governance processes involved in this transaction, in the approval of the transaction. On the 4th of February 2013, the Portfolio Management Committee on Listed Investments, having completed necessary due diligence, resolved to recommend the transaction to the IC as follows. An irrevocable approval to invest 2 billion plus 40 million rands towards due diligence, costs and advisory fees, and for the purchase of 100% of Independent News Media South Africa. to implement the financing structure where PIC will advance shareholder loans of 1.3 billion to independent news media as South Africa, NMSA, to take up 35% equity in NMSA and provide a loan of 500 million to Sekunjalo to acquire an equity stake in INMSA. The IC at its meeting of the 6th of February 2013 gave an in-principle approval on the basis that the transaction does fit the mandate and will recommend the transaction to the board, provided that the board deliberate and adjudicate on the reputational risk issues. There should be no material changes in the audited financial statement for 2012 financial year. Personal sureties provided by the key sponsor for the PIC loan of 500 million to the Sekunjalo Consortium. The board accept the recommendation of the IC. The PIC presented the proposal to the GPF on the 21st of February 2013 because the 2 billion exposure needed approval as per new limits they had imposed in their mandate to the PIC in response to the collapse of AfriSam. The GPF expressed discomfort with the exposure even though it was within the limits prescribed in the new private placement memorandum, PPM. Their concern was that the asset was in the sector that had a bleak future. Although GPF were not supportive of the deal, their view was that the PIC can make a decision as long as the exposure does not exceed 2 billion. The board met on the 22nd of February to discuss the recommendation of IC. It did not support the proposal but decided that the transaction team should pursue a revised proposal based on a lower price and a possible investment in a secure instrument such as debt with another investor sharing the risk in equity. The revised proposal, when ready, can be submitted to the board directly. The board met again on the 11th of March 2013 to consider a revised transaction from the transaction team. After a deliberation on the merits and demerits of the transaction, the board finally approved a maximum of 1.44 billion investment into INMSA as follows. Direct PIC equity of 25% for 167 million into INMSA. Shareholder loan to INMSA of 773 million redeemable redeemable at an IRR of 15% per annum, secured by assets of INMSA ranking below the senior debt facilities and other rights. Equity loan to Sekunjalo of 500 million at 6 months Johannesburg Interbank borrowing average rate, JIBAR, plus a margin of 7 to 9%. Secured by a 150 million corporate guarantee from Sekunjalo Investment Holdings, a majority shareholder in Sekunjalo Consortium, with all shares in INMSA held by Sekunjalo ceded to the PIC as security, as well as other step-in rights to be negotiated. The balance of 600 million senior debt must be raised from banks on the back of a PIC guarantee within 6 months, and an introduction of staff incentive scheme, and the current CEO agreeing to remain. As part of its capital raise to reduce PIC exposure, Sekunjalo approached the China Africa Development Fund, CAT Fund, a private equity fund that has been investing in the continent. The CAT Fund, through Interacom, took up a 20% equity in INMSA plus senior debt. An amount of 397 million was repaid to the PIC and thus reduced the total exposure to 888.3 million rands. The media reports that the PIC had invested 2 billion were false. The final exposure after the entry of a new investor was less than 1 billion. The loans and claims were as follows. We've put a table on the next page, Commissioner. The instrument direct equity, 25% in NMSA for amount of 237 million. In the beginning, 71 million was repaid and the next exposure was 166 million. And this was supposed to be exited in 7 years. Shareholder loan from PIC to INMSA of 183 million, which would mature on the 16th of August 2020. Term loan from PIC to Sekunjalo of 571.9 million, of which 325 was repaid and the balance was 253.933 million to be repaid on the 16th of August 2018. And the pref shares from PIC Renewable to the value of 285 million. This would mature in 29th of August 2021. So the total loans and claims would be 883.3 million. That is the exposure. This transaction attracted significant media attention. The Gupta family had previously failed in their bid, and it was common cause that the family continued to want a stake in the investment. After completing the transaction, I later learned that they had an option to buy 27.5% of INMSA from Sekunjalo, which was agreed at the time Sekunjalo was looking for investment partners. I was concerned with the idea of possibly assisting or allowing the Guptas to boost their propaganda machinery by taking up a shareholding in INMSA. Had they obtained any shareholding in INMSA, it would have narrowed participation in the media space and seriously increased the risk of both diminishing competition and the risk of breach of competition law by the PIC. So I was totally against the idea and refused their participation. Subsequently, we observed that most media houses experienced a drop in government business, with INMSA being the hardest hit. The asset has...
Sorry, some clarification here. Just on the table, in terms of the 25% in the equity, you say the maturity date is 7 years. I don't understand that in an equity is the
No,
maturity.
in other words, the idea was to exit in 7 years.
In 7 years.
Yeah, it's an exit.
Which will be what, 2020, I think.
Which will be
Next
2020,
year.
next
2020,
year. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And then the second one, shareholder loan, does it bear any, the interest? Any interest?
It has to be redeemed at an IRR of 15% per annum.
Okay, but it's not
which is
charged.
an implied interest rate, cost
At the
of funding.
end, at the end, it's not sort of ongoing payments in the interest
Absolutely, no ongoing payments, but
Okay.
it has to be redeemed at 15%
per annum.
IRR
IRR,
Yeah.
complete. Okay,
Yeah.
at the end of the period.
at the end of the period,
Okay,
Commissioner.
all right. And then the term loan expires in August last year, actually.
Yes,
The repayment.
yes.
Total, sort of 100% of the
Absolutely, the
okay.
253 million
Okay, all right.
was supposed to be repaid last year.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and the prefs, of course, 2021. Then, yeah,
That's correct.
the prefs are in 2021.
That's correct.
Do they
Commissioner.
carry any preference dividends?
Yes, I don't have the percentage, but they would have a dividend.
Some pref dividends,
Yes,
and were they paid? Sort of repaid? Do you know the preference dividends?
They are only due in 2021.
Or the whole sort of the capital amount plus
Plus
the pre-
interest,
the,
yes.
the
It's
prefs,
rolling
yeah.
up. I think the interest was rolling up.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
I see.
it's retro-
They were not supposed to be paid on an ongoing basis.
That's my understanding.
It's sort of a roll-up
Yes,
of the pref dividends. Is that
that
what
is
you're
my
saying?
understanding of the
Okay.
instrument.
All right. Thank you.
Can I proceed? Okay. The asset has performed very poorly in terms of financial returns in line with other media, print media companies. For example, Tiso Black's Group is down 72%, Caxton Publishers 50% from 2014 to date. On the social return side, I strongly believe that the investment has facilitated transformation and localization of one of the oldest and the largest newspaper groups in the country. It is contributing to democracy by keeping citizenry informed as expected from a media company. This has a direct impact on the economy, which of course is the driver of investment performance in client portfolios. The INMSA has not been able to meet its obligations due to a tough operating environment. I understand that Sekunjalo Investment has funded most of the working capital so far. Sekunjalo approached the PIC as early as 2017 September with a proposal to restructure the loans and claims that are due and payable to the PIC. The PMC, it's a mistake, there's a mistake, I think it's the 31st of October 2017, a copy of which is attached and marked DD58, discuss the proposal from Sekunjalo Investment Holding Pty Ltd, SIM. SIM proposed to acquire all the shares and loans claims that PIC has in Sekunjalo in exchange for shares in a new company to be listed named Sagarmatha. This would provide the PIC with an exit from INMSA. This new company was expected to have a primary listing on the JSE and a secondary listing on the Hong Kong and New York stock exchanges. SIM presented the offer to the PIC whereby all equity and loan claims to the amount of 1.55 billion were to be converted to shares in Sagarmatha at the listing price to be published in the pre-listing statement. The table below summarizes the offer to the PIC. So the amount invested, as we said before, was 88.3 billion, and the valuation was about 1.3 billion of all the loans and claims. And SIM offer, the Sekunjalo offer, was for 1.5 billion rand worth of shares in the new listing. The PIC counter offer was for the conversion of 334 million equity, in other words, only the equity component in INMSA, into equity in Sagarmatha, and all loans and claims be settled at their amortized values as at the 30th of October 2017. The PIC counter offer allowed the PIC to fully exit the loans and pref shares with a return of 13%. Furthermore, the listed investment team would carry out its own analysis and assess appetite for the news listing. The PMC recommended the transaction to PEP's FIP for consideration. The PEP's FIP considered the proposal at this special meeting of the 6th of December 2017. A copy of the minutes and resolution is attached and marked DD 59. The FIP raised various issues around the proposal. The team highlighted that the offer is conditional on the PIC's participation in the listing of Sagarmatha and that there will be no cash payout but issuance of shares. The fifth requested the listed investment team should test the appetite of the IC even though the transaction falls within the delegated authority of PMC listed investments. The FIP approved the proposed offer for SIM to acquire PIC, all PIC shares and claims in IMSA and SIM subject to the exit not dependent on the listing of Sagarmatha. The requisite approval of board of directors and shareholders should be obtained. IC must confirm appetite for this transaction. This approval was reduced to an agreement signed by me on behalf of the PIC and concluded with SIM. One of the suspensive conditions of the agreement was the successful listing of Sagarmatha, which ultimately never happened, and therefore the agreement never became operational and lapsed. A copy of the agreement is attached and marked DD 16.
I think just stop there. Commissioner, I think that we'll stop at that point in time. I don't have any questions.
Mr. Commissioner, my colleague, Mr. Monahela, will do the questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Dr. Machila, may I start with the James Nogu emails? Did any director of the PIC investee company have an interest in the allegations made by James Nogu and Lee Shola against you?
Yes, Commissioner.
Who was that businessman?
It was Dr. Iqbal Seve.
Why did he have an interest in the allegations against you?
The issue of James Nogu was in the news, and he asked for a copy because his journalists wanted to write a story. We're writing a story about it, an article about James Nogu emails.
So the allegations were in the news. Why was it necessary for you to forward the emails to him? Because you forwarded the emails to him.
He wanted to see the emails because some other journalists had those emails already. That's why the story was in the news.
Okay, there is an email of the 8th of November 2017. That is email correspondence between you, Ms. Menye, and Mr. Simpiwe Maisela, which was marked strictly confidential. You also forwarded that email correspondence to him.
That's correct.
When did it lose its confidentiality?
Once it was in the newspapers that have been investigated by the SABs. The case has been opened against me with the SABs.
Okay. So you only, the case was investigated, I think it started in, is it October 2017? So it only became necessary for you to inform him about it on 8 November 2017.
Repeat the question, I didn't understand the question.
I mean, the issue of the case started in October 2017, if I remember correctly. And you only forwarded the emails to him on the 8th of November. Why didn't you forward them to him in October and instead did it on 8 November 2017?
He requested the information.
Okay. Let's go to the agreement that you referred to at paragraph 407 of your statement. The offer or the proposal, I understand, was made by Sekunjalo Independent Media. Am I correct?
Yes.
And if you look at the agreement, it's an agreement between PIC as representative of the GEPF and Sagarmatha. That's the agreement is Annexure DD 60 to your statement.
I think it's the one on the additional supplementaries. Okay, let's proceed. Yeah, I think we have it. It's in the supplementary bundle.
We've got it. We've got it.
Mr. Commissioner, I have it, but it's not, I don't have it as an annexure to Dr. Machila's statement. It formed part of the annexures to Mr. Ndaza's statement.
We've got an unsigned one, if you remember. Yeah, I think I do have it. Just take it out. Mr. Manila. This one.
Mr. Commissioner, the agreement that I'm referring to is the sale of shares and claims agreement.
Maybe we need a copy then. Give us a copy.
Yes. Mr. Commissioner, may I just ask for a short adjournment? It looks like Dr. Machila does not have it with
Yeah,
him.
but I'd like to know, are you talking about a different document to DD 60?
Mr. Commissioner, the agreement that I understand to relate to the approval, the PEPS-FIP approval, is the sale of shares and claims agreement, unless I'm making a mistake.
Well, mine is headed Payment Agreement between Independent News and Media South Africa, etc., and Sekunjalo Independent Media and Government Employees Pension Fund. That's the document at DD 60. That's
Okay.
not what you're referring to.
May I then ask for just a short adjournment so that we can make copies of the agreement that I'm referring to?
These annexures that we have.
I believe so, Mr. Commissioner.
I'm sure we can get us copies.
You let us know when you're ready. Yes, Mr. Manahela.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Dr. Machila, I have handed over 2 copies of the agreement that I thought you were referring to as Annexure DD 60. The one that I have given to you is the sale of shares and claims agreement. May you please turn to the last page of that agreement? Is that your signature that appears on that agreement?
Sorry, Commissioner. It is my signature.
And you signed it on the 13th of December 2017?
Yes.
That is some 6 days after the PEPS-FIP took that resolution.
That's right.
What was the basis for you signing that agreement?
Because the FIPS is happy that we can exchange loans and claims for shares in a company to be listed later on.
In which resolution did they say that? You say the FIPS was happy. Now, my question is, in which resolution did they say that? Because the only resolution that I'm aware of is the one of the 6th of December 2017.
Commissioner, what I know is that there was a discussion around this and acceptance of the exchange of our loans and claims, in other words, PIC, into equity of a new company to be listed at the later stage. This is just an agreement recording that desire. There's no listed company yet. This is just a desire to say, if it lists, then we will subscribe for those shares at that point.
No, I think that the question is different. I suppose one should ask, was there a resolution that was passed in respect of this agreement? If so, where is it?
Commissioner, I'll have to look at it because I remember quite well this document here was prepared by the team. In fact, I was asking the evidence leader why he didn't invite Mr. Mervyn Muller, who was very much close to this thing here. He would give a much better view of the process and what led to the signing of this agreement. So I don't have all the information around me. In fact, if I look at this, Mr. Miller is the one who was completing the form. I only signed on it on the basis of their recommendation. So there would be some information somewhere that authorizes this, because this was even commissioned, I think, Commissioner, this sale agreement was prepared, as you can see, by a legal firm here, TGR, so we may need more information as to how we arrive at this.
But Dr. Majila, that cannot be true, because on the 26th of January, and I didn't know that you were going to say this, on the 26th of January 2018, the same Mr. Mervyn Miller addressed a letter to Dr. Iqbal Savvy, where he dealt with or set out the approval by PEPS-FIP and set out the conditions precedent. And Mr. Commissioner, that letter was Annexure D to Mr. Ndasa's statement, if I may be permitted to read it into the record. It's addressed to Dr. Savvy. It reads as follows: Dear Dr. Savvy, and then the subject of the letter, approval letter in respect of the offer from Sekunjalo Independent Media, Proprietary Limited, to acquire all the shares and loan claims that the PIC has in and against Independent News and Media South Africa Proprietary Limited, and SIM. Then paragraph 1 reads as follows: We refer to your SIM's proposed offer to acquire all the shares and loan claims that the Public Investment Corporation SOC Limited has in and against INMSA and SIM, the offer. This letter serves to confirm that the PIC's Fund Investment Panel, FIP, has approved the offer, subject to the terms and conditions included in this letter. Paragraph 2. The key terms and conditions of the approval include and are not limited to: 1. PIC's 25% equity stake in independent media to be acquired at 100% premium to the price paid by PIC in independent media as at August 2013. 2. PIC's loan claims against independent media to be settled at amortized carrying value as at 31st December 2017. 3. PIC's preference shares in independent media to be settled at amortized carrying value as at 31 December 2017. 4. PIC's loan claims against SIM to be settled at amortized carrying value as at 31 December 2017. 5. The offer should be separate from the offer to acquire a stake in Sagarmatha, and the PIC's acceptance to exit its investment in IMSA and SIM should not be conditional upon the PIC's participation in the listing of Sagarmatha. And 6. There should be compliance with all relevant company agreements prior to the implementation of the transaction. Paragraph 3 reads as follows. The PIC should be provided with the information pertaining to how SIM would fund the proposed offer. The PIC's approval of the offer is subject to negotiation and execution of all the requisite transaction documents for a transaction of this nature in a form and substance satisfactory to the PIC. Paragraph 4. Kindly note that this letter does not in itself constitute a contract and is only intended to inform you of the status of the application. Paragraph 5. If you require further information, please do not hesitate to contact Mr. Mervyn Miller at 012-742-3400 or mervyn.miller@pic.gov.za or Reabezwe Nosi on 012-742-3506 or reabezwe.nosi@pic.gov.za, and the letter is signed by Mr. Miller.
So sorry, what did you say? To which statement is that letter a copy? Or
It's
next?
Annexure D to Mr. Ndasa's statement.
We don't have a copy of that annexure, Mr. Commissioner.
You have a copy for the other side.
I will email the letter to the Secretariat for them to make copies, Mr. Commissioner.
But isn't one of our officials here who can be sent to go and make copies?
Where is that?
All right, are you able to proceed in the meantime?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner. I don't know if Dr.
Sorry, Mr. Monahela, just for clarity, because this is now two documents that we've got that relate to what would have been DD 60, is that correct? The one is the one you've just distributed to us, and the one that was in the file that we received from Dr. Machila.
Yes.
So the one that is DD 60 in the file, what is the status of that document vis-a-vis the one you've just read?
I saw the email, the document for the first time today because I didn't have that annexure. I'm not even sure, because the annexure DD 60 that I saw is not signed.
Yeah, but it hasn't come up yet, has it? It's still coming up.
No, he has already dealt with it. That's at paragraph 407 of the statement.
Sorry, then perhaps through you, Mr. Manahela, perhaps Dr. Machila's team can just tell us the status of DD 60 as it's unsigned and how it relates to this paragraph 407.
Sorry, go ahead, Okay. Commissioner, we presented this because I thought there would be another copy, signed copy of that, this DD 60, capturing the approval of the committee.
Yes, you say in the statement this approval was reduced to an agreement signed by me on behalf of PIC, and then you refer
exactly.
to DD 60.
Yes. I mean, we could only get an unsigned copy.
I suppose the copy is not signed, copy that you could get.
Yes,
is
we could
unsigned.
get, yeah.
But you say you did sign.
I remember signing such, because in this is just part of the negotiation around Sagarmatha. You can see this one starts in 2017, but it's undergoing several iterations and back and forth to a point where we eventually don't have a deal because Sagarmatha is not listed. But there is a lot of negotiations portfolio committee. Some are referred to the FIP if the approval is within their delegated authority, or back to the PIC, back and forth in that way, until, we say Sagarmatha could not list.
The document that has now been given to us, the sale of shares and so on, that one you remember signing?
I remember this, and what I was trying to do is the motivation around signing, because this, I remember, would have been discussed at the PMC and agreed that if this is the nature of the exit, we will do it, but the company must list. This is subject to the listing. That's why I understood it. We're not doing sales and claim on a company that does not exist, because even the share price is being mentioned here that it will list at about 39 rands. But listing within the PIC don't move from, in other words, we can't convert a company from unlisted to listed and simply pass it on to the listed team. There has to be concurrence. That's why there is this proposal which is subject to listing and the satisfactory, to the satisfaction of the listing team. They will do their own independent work, which they did. If there's no agreement on the price, this falls away, because the listing doesn't happen. So that's the nature of the negotiations around the exit of independent news media.
When you say this one falls away, you mean
the
one
that,
prepared by
that,
TGR?
Absolutely. It falls away because this is the exit for the unlisted team. I think this is something that the Commission has to look at as well. The operation, how the unlisted team and the listed team operates, because they may have conflicting interests at some point, but for the same client. The unlisted team wants to sell at the highest price. Normally, everyone wants to sell at the highest price. The listed team, if there is a price, it has to be the lowest possible, or something that the price that is acceptable to them, in other words. So that's always what needs to be balanced.
Mr. Monahela will take that further. In the meantime, can we give this document, this later document, a reference? Can we put it as DD 60.1?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
Right, it's TD 60.1. You may carry on then.
Yes, Dr. Machila, you said Mr. Mervyn Miller would have advised you on that agreement.
Yeah, the team would have advised me on this agreement.
Now, the question that I have is, if he had done so, why would he then write a letter to Dr. Survey and stating the conditions that were proposed by the PEPS firm?
Commissioner, as I said, there are several iterations to this. There have been other meetings that are not captured and negotiations around trying to exit this. This as well obviously was not accepted eventually, and it fell away because the next committee said, we can understand this. The IC said, but let them rather pay us cash for all the loans and claims. That's what eventually was put on the table, as I explained here. So this is still part of negotiation. It's not a final document that binds the PIC in any other form or otherwise.
No, but the PEPS firm had made a resolution. Mr. Miller was merely carrying out or communicating what the PEPS firm resolution was.
He did that, I accept, Commissioner. And subsequently, the same committee said the listed team must be tested and IC must be tested for appetite, which is another step. That's why I'm saying this was not final, because this is the FIP that says we can do this as a FIP. And you can write and communicate the decision of the FIP. But the FIP, at the same time, is referring to the transaction to the IC to say, test appetite. And because this is now the unlisted team, the listed team as well has to kick in to assess if this will work for them. So there's another stage. This is not final, as I explained here. There has been several stages to a point where eventually there was no deal because certain conditions were not met.
But Dr. Machila, the contents of that letter relates to the PIC's exit from independent media, which was an unlisted company. Do you agree?
I agree.
So the listed investments team were going to deal with the proposed investment in Sagarmatha, which was going to be listed.
Yes.
Those are two different things.
Commissioner, these are not two different things. The exit here is a listing of a company called Sagarmatha, and this is the values that the PIC says they are prepared to convert at if there is such a listing, in essence.
Sorry, just on clarity, I didn't understand that to be the case. If I look at the resolution, it says, and the letter reiterates that, it tells you all of how to do it. The offer should be separate from any offer to acquire stake in Sagarmatha, and the PIC's acceptance to accept its investment in IMSA and SIM should not be conditional upon the PIC's participation in the listing of Sagarmatha. So there were two distinct questions here. This was the offer of coming out of independent media at whatever, which from your statement linked the two, that it was, you were going to go into Sagarmatha, and in essence, as Mr. We'll come back to that just now, I'll come back to that just now. But in essence, there were two distinct questions. This is how we could come out of independent media commitment, and this is what would happen, but it cannot be linked to the Sagarmatha listing, is the decision. Whether or not then there's a Sagarmatha listing, it says that should then be submitted in and of its own right for consideration and see if there's a PIC investment, if there's a PIC appetite. So the way I would understand it is that if Sekonjalo then felt that the two were intertwined, then it should reply and say, with these preconditions, then the independent media offer falls away because it's dependent upon Sagarmatha. That's the way I would have read the document so far.
Yeah.
The two are interconnected in Sekonjalo's approach.
Yeah.
The PIC's decision was they should not be connected, and therefore if there's an offer to independent media, it's got to stand alone, and if there's a Sagarmatha listing, it's got to come and be presented to see if there's a PIC appetite.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of the deal.
Yeah. I think, Commissioner, you're right. I think this is always a challenge of receiving documents, at short notice here. I don't know how we implore the team here to provide us with information so our responses are a lot more coherent and we don't waste time of the Commission here. But the Commissioner is right, because this PEPS is saying that we are fine, we can accept the proposal of settlement, provided that it's not linked, so they need cash, it must be separated. And at the same time they say, go and test, let the other team do its work, and most importantly, also IC to test appetite. I think that was part of the decision here. So Mervyn Miller was simply saying, we met, the committee met, we know we have this document here, which we said if you list, we will consider that, but the committee is saying a different thing. It says, these two matters must be separate. Listing and settlement must be separated. And this is the letter. But at the same time, that FIP on that day said, IC must have a look at this to test appetite, and also the listed team must do their own work
They
independently.
didn't quite say that.
Yeah.
They said, according to the resolution 8226, in the event that the Sagarmatha listing occurs, in the event that it occurs, this is your DD 59. It's your DD 59. So paragraph 822.6. In the event that the Sagarmatha listing occurs, the transaction team should then present the transaction to the investment committee to test the PIC's appetite. That's different from saying it must come back to that. It's saying if the listing occurs, you can come back. So it's slightly different from there, and obviously I'm reading from the text which you didn't have in front of you, but it is there. So I think just for the clarity, Mr. Monahela, these are two very distinctly different, if you like, preconditions.
Yes.
They are not linked.
Not at all.
The PIC is very clear that independent media needs to be settled, and Sagarmatha, should it list, can come back for consideration.
And the PEPS FIP made it clear that, and when I go through the PEPS FIP resolution, it's clear from that resolution that they required independent SIM to pay cash.
That's right, he's captured, that's correct.
Dr. Machila, I would like to go back to the question that I asked you earlier. What was the basis for you signing this agreement, the sale of shares and claims agreement, on the 13th of December 2017?
There was a proposal to convert our shares into Sagarmatha shares to be listed at some point. This is the essence of this agreement.
And do you agree with that on the 6th of December 2017, the PEPS FIP decided that the PIC's exit should be separate from the offer to acquire a stake in Sagarmatha, and that the PIC's acceptance to exit its investment in Independent Media South Africa and Sekunjalo Independent Media should not be conditional upon the PIC's participation in the listing of Sagarmatha?
That's correct.
Are you then saying that there were two contrary, or the proposal that was made later was contrary to the decision or resolution that had been taken by the PEPS-FIP?
Yes, because the FIP felt that there has to be settlement in cash and the two separated.
Who made the proposal that you referred to?
Who made the proposal to who?
You said there was a proposal after the PEPS-FIP's resolution. Who did the proposal come from?
Which PIP resolution are you talking about this? Sorry, Commissioner.
I'm
Apologies.
referring to the PEPS-FIP resolution of 6 December 2017, which made it clear that the PIC's exit from independent media should not be subject to the PIC subscribing for shares in Sagarmatha.
I don't understand the question, Commissioner.
Dr. Machila, I asked you a question. What was the basis for you signing that agreement? And you referred to a proposal.
This agreement was signed on the 14th of December 2017.
You signed it on the 13th.
The 13th of December 2017.
Yes. And it made it clear that the PIC's exit from independent media should not be subject to the PIC subscribing for shares in Sagarmatha. Do you agree?
I don't understand, Commissioner. I'll have to look at this. Again, I'm extremely uncomfortable responding to things that I see now. I need to get more information as to why this was signed. What is the rationale, so I can be able to explain properly. At this stage, we're working with dates only, but there may be information in between that led to this.
I think that would be very helpful, because we're really dealing with 3 attachments, if I'm correct.
Exactly.
And Mr. Monahela, you'll help us. It's DD 59, which
Yes.
is the resolutions taken by the FIPS, by the committee on the 6th of December.
Yes.
Then there is the signing of this agreement with Sagarmatha, which contradicts the decisions or the resolutions of that's DD 59.
Yes.
And that, because that's signed with Sagarmatha when there was the agreement that it should not be linked.
Yes.
And then there is what was the original DD 60, which is, as you've said earlier, maybe you've got a signed copy, this one was unsigned, of the work in progress. So I think if you needed to look at that, Dr. Mashila and Edward Monahela, it's those 3 documents that we need clarity on what happened there.
Yes. And I have a problem with Dr. Machila saying that he doesn't understand the question. The PEPS-FIP resolution is attached to his own statement. And I'm saying to him that the PEPS-FIP had taken a resolution that the PIC's exit from independent media should not be subject to the PIC subscribing for shares in Sagarmatha.
Sorry, if I can understand you properly, Edward Monahela, the resolution says you can't, and the document you've just circulated to all of us, DD 61, shows a signing with Sagarmatha as part of the deal.
And although it purports to be a sale of shares and claims agreement, it's in fact a share swap agreement. Now, my question to Dr. Machila is, what was the basis for him signing the agreement? I believe that, and he referred to a proposal, that there was a proposal. My question is, who did the proposal come from?
Mr. Commissioner, can I just interject at this point in time? I think that Dr. Machila, in all fairness, has only just been given this documentation. He's indicated that he's not in a position to deal with it because it was only given at short notice. And what has happened is that he said that he needs to think about these events and reconcile them in his mind as to how this particular document came to be signed. And I must also just place it on record, Commissioners, that it's only under certain special circumstances that a witness can be cross-examined. And my learned friend's questioning is bordering very close on cross-examination of Dr. Machila, especially when he suggests to Dr. Machila that he's being untruthful with the Commission as he has. So unless there's going to be an application by the evidence leader for the cross-examination of Dr. Mutulu, our position is that the questioning needs to be a lot less robust than what it is at this point in time.
Yeah, all right, let me hear what Mr. Monahe wants to say.
Mr. Commissioner, I'm just here to, as the evidence leader, to establish the truth. And I don't know why my learned friend says I'm suggesting that Dr. Machila is untruthful. But I'm willing to give Dr. Machila an opportunity to go through the agreement, and we can go back to deal with the agreement tomorrow.
That's fine, but I just want to say you must be maybe a little softer, not in terms of your voice, but avoid the appearance of cross-examination of the witness. Now,
Yes.
I'm not sure what's going to happen now with regard to what Mr. Ruloff has said about Dr. Machila wanting to have a look at the documents that were made available that have just been made available to him. Don't you think it's only fair that he has time to study the document and?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner. In fact, I said that we can go back to the agreement tomorrow. We can deal with it tomorrow. And Mr. Commissioner, my colleague has just referred to me to the rules of this commission, Rule 3.2, which reads as follows. A member of the commission's legal team may put questions to a witness whose evidence is presented to the commission by the commission's legal team, including questions aimed at assisting the commission in assessing the truthfulness of the evidence of a witness. Subject to the directions of the chairperson, the commissioner's legal team may ask leading questions.
Does that help you?
It does, Mr. Commissioner.
No, but it says nothing about cross-examination. All I'm saying is that tone down so that it is not suggested that you're now cross-examining the witness. Sure, you are here to help placing the truth before this commission. But there's a little difference between that and then cross-examining a witness. That's what the complaint is about.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, maybe it is because maybe he said that because I'm not soft, like the commissioner said, I should be soft.
Yes. All right. I've made the point that just make sure you do not sort of go over to cross-examining the witness. Now, what is the position now with regard? Will you go on to something else and then come back to the question of these documents and their contradictory nature?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner. Dr. Machila, may we go to the...
Can we just make this copy of this letter of 26 January 2018, DD 60.2?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner.
DD 60.2.
Can I just interrupt here with my cracked voice, Mr. Commissioner? And I'm not trying to assist my junior, Mr. Monahela. He's big enough to do that. But I just want to place it on record that all documentation was available for Dr. Machila and his legal team because these witnesses, where this documentation come from, they have testified. And Dr. Machila was requested coming here to deal specifically with these investments. But I'm not also criticizing Dr. Machila, but I just want to place on record that from the legal team's perspective, and we've given our full cooperation to assist Dr. Machila to come prepared to the Commission.
I accept that. It might just be a question of not knowing which documents are going to be used.
Absolutely fair enough, and we have no objection to Dr. Machila having an opportunity and his counsel to have a look at that.
That's precisely the point, Mr. Commissioner. There are hundreds of documents that are sometimes available concerning a particular transaction. It's very difficult for Dr. Machila to spot which ones the evidence leaders are going to use in order to ask him questions about.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I thought that Dr. Machila was aware of Mr. Chifang, Mr. Ndasa's evidence before this commission, but I'm not trying to justify us not giving him the documents.
I think,
Commissioner, I'm not saying he wasn't aware of Ndatsa's evidence. It's just a matter of which documents are going to be used at what stage of, the evidence to be heard.
Commissioner, we actually even requested annexures to statements that implicate me from the commission. We did ask for that. We didn't receive this one and others that have been produced as short notice in this commission.
Anyway, that's fine, but suffice to say that statements are also available on the website of the Commission, so statements are available, but let's not debate that. Let's leave it there.
The problem was the annexures, Commissioner. You're 100% correct, but the annexures are missing. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Dr. Machila, may I just ask you a question on the issue of transaction fees? You say in paragraph 393.1 of your statement, and that's the PMC unlisted. You said they had completed necessary due diligence and resolved to recommend the transaction to the IC as follows: 393.1, an irrevocable approval to invest 2 billion rand plus 40 million rand towards due diligence costs and advisory fees, and for the purchase of 100% of IMSA. Were the transaction costs or fees approved by the PIC?
As far as I can remember, this was the proposal. The final proposal, I can't remember because it was a lesser amount. I'm sure the team or the PIC can give us the breakdown of the final transaction value as well as related fees to that. I don't have information around the fees. As I explained, I don't get into that detail in terms of fees and so on.
Okay. Now, we know, and Mr. Benedict Mangalo testified before this commission, that independent news and media, South Africa, was struggling. And he said something about it being in the sunset industry. And the GEPF was not comfortable with investment in the company. Why did the PIC invest in the company despite the fact that there were problems?
Commissioner, this transaction went through investment committee, or it started with PMC investment committee and the board of the PIC, which eventually approved it. And for various reasons that we've given, from mandate fee that they saw, its impact in the economy, the transformation imperative that this transaction is driving. And they were clear upfront to say the returns may not be good financial returns, but they meet the mandate. The most important one is the impact on the economy on which the bigger portfolio depended. That was the motivation for an approval.
Mr. Commissioner, I have no further questions on independent media, subject to the arrangement that we will return to the agreement tomorrow.
Yes, noted.
Dr. Mutulu, what we're going to do then is deal with independent media up to the points where we're now dealing with the different documents and the agreements. Okay, so we're going to go back and ask some questions around that. Is that okay?
Okay.
If we go back to the beginning, I would start with this question that we're on 394.3, the investment committee asked for personal surety. Personal surety is provided by the key sponsor. Whose personal surety was that? That was given, 394.3?
That will be Dr. Iqbal Seve.
So he would have given personal surety for R500 million.
I don't know what the final figure was, but there was such. I think he put forward a balance sheet.
But
again, we'll have to check the details because there was a negotiation, but I think he put forward the balance sheet to the extent of 150 million.
Okay, but that would have been personal surety, not any company.
I think it was finally a company. I'm not quite sure about that.
Can we check, because personal surety I would have read as being an individual, not a company. Perhaps you could advise us, Advocate Libba, whether that could be a company that stands surety which you signed for.
Noted.
Okay. And that, then we look at 295 and 296. And again, I'm looking at the comments that have been made during your testimony about listening and hearing your advisors and people's comments. If you looked at it, the GPF expressed discomfort with the exposure, even though it was within the limits prescribed in terms of the PPM. Their view was the PIC can make a decision as long as the exposure doesn't exceed the 2 billion, but they expressed their discomfort. If you take the board meeting, it equally did not support the proposal and asked the transaction team should pursue a revised proposal based on lower price, a possible investment. And then if you looked at its agreement on the 11th of March 2013, they approved a maximum of 1.44 billion investment into independent media, but they set out fairly stringent conditionalities in relation to that. And I wasn't sure what was meant by on 397.3, what it would be intended, as well as other step-in rights to be negotiated. Were those other step-in rights negotiated and finalized?
This would form the part of the legal agreement, would be captured in the
So it would be captured in that, and it was done?
I think
as
so,
step-in
yes,
rights.
yeah.
Because the question I'm asking you, given that it is an advice from Mr. Mongalo as your team saying, look, this is a risk investment. Your board saying we're concerned, we are discomforted by it, we put in conditions. The GPF equally expressing discomfort. The fact that, I know it's now after the fact, but after the fact this loan has never been serviced.
Yeah.
That given all of the concerns there and the fact that the loan has never been serviced, how do you think about it in a sense of saying, should you have listened more carefully? Because this is an investment, and again, I would link it to a point you make about, there are 2 points. One in 400, where you say that you was looking for investment partners. And I'm quoting here, I was concerned with the idea of possibly assisting or allowing the Guptas to boost their propaganda machinery by taking a shareholding in independent media. And then your comment in 401, it is contributing to democracy by keeping the citizenry informed as expected from a media company. What was your thinking in both the concerns expressed by those advising you and taking decisions, and the point about taking a stake in media? Because if we wanted to keep concerned, why only independent media? Why not a whole lot of other media houses to ensure they were all in difficulty, as you've pointed out, to ensure that they would all be sustainable to provide the information to the South African citizenry? You focused on one independent media house.
Commissioner, what's very important to understand here is that we're taking transaction to committees that approve. And the committee can say no, or the committee can say go ahead and do this thing, provided you achieve this and this. It can't look like I decided to go and do the transaction on my own. There is a committee. So there's a committee that's supposed to take collective responsibility for this transaction, and not Dan Machila alone. I think that needs to be understood that way. This is the decision of the board.
The question with it is, accepting, what I'm raising is that whether it's you in your different role, CIO at that time, I'm assuming you were still the CIO at that time, not the CEO, in 2012-13?
I was the CIO.
You were the CIO, and therefore you play a key role in that recommendation as the Chief Investment Officer. What I'm asking is that given the responses to you, did you not look at it and say, okay, if we look at media, maybe we need a broader investment in media. We are concerned that media is in a risk situation across the board, as you've pointed out, and there are people looking at propaganda, etc. I understand what you're raising about committees, but as a Chief Investment Officer, you have a particular role and responsibility within those committees and within your relations to the board, etc. So what I'm asking is that, did you reconsider this? And then if you say in 402, the independent media has not been able to meet its obligations to a tough operating environment, you knew that from the outset. You knew from the outset this was a difficult circumstance for media.
Yeah. Commissioner, again, it's the nature of the investment. It's a guessing game. You may guess quite well and indeed be proven right. You may be wrong. You know, so that's the nature of investments. We wouldn't know. Today, we may look like we would have known that things are not going to work out, but based on probabilities and the value proposition that was put forward to us at that time, based on the digital strategy that was put in front of us at that time, because we didn't say print media is a dying media, we understand that, but what are the mitigants against that? And a comprehensive digital strategy was put forward to mitigate that over time. And we bought into that strategy, coupled with transformation and others. And the board agreed with that. Despite reservation, they approved the transaction on that basis. So I'm again reluctant to take, full responsibility when there was a committee that dealt with this thing and never raised. Although they raised questions, they were happy for the transaction to go through. It was in their right to say, don't do the transaction, and that's it. We wouldn't have done the transaction.
I'm going to come back to something you said the other day, which was that the board has never rejected a recommendation from the investment committee. So they may have the right, but they obviously defer to the investment committee. But in 402, independent media has not been able to meet its obligations due to a tough operating environment. Are you condoning their non-payment? Have you taken measures for them to service this debt?
We have, including the restructuring that's in place. It was part of an attempt to deal with the problem. I mean, companies do restructure their balance sheet or move into other areas of business that they believe they can add more value. And their proposal was about that. Inability, there was no cash, clearly, for them to settle the obligations. And you can even see in the final proposal that was accepted that the committee was saying, well, there's no chance that we'll get full money back, but let them pay a certain amount to show that there is commitment towards settlement of these loans and obligations.
If you looked at Mr. Molabatse's statement, he said before the commission that one of the issues that he had was that, and he's relating back to the Sagarmatha issue, that some of the cash raised from the IPO of Sagarmatha, is it Sagarmatha? Yes, I think it's Sagarmatha, would be used to, in essence, buy independent media shares from the PIC. And the way he put it was, in effect, this would mean that the exit from the PIC, from independent media, would be funded by the PIC. And that was one of the concerns that was raised. Is that something that you understood from the agreements and the approvals, that this is what would happen?
Yeah, I think it's the two stages here. First, the transaction was to convert loans and claims only in independent news media. In other words, convert into the whole consideration. I think it was about 1.5 billion that they were looking at into a new listing. And the IC said, we don't want to see that. I think this must be separate. The two things must be completely separated. And the proposal was that independent news media should settle all their loans and obligation in cash, and Sagarmatha be looked at independently. And I think that's what happened, ultimately.
The essence of it is that there's still been no servicing of the independent media's debt to the PIC.
Yeah, when I left, they had not paid.
They had not paid and still have not paid.
Proposal on the table, and
yeah.
We even wrote a default letter. I did sign a default letter.
I've seen that letter. You've sent them a default letter. But the question for then is, does this just then, at the end of 2018 when you left, does this simply continue 2013 to 2018, 5 years of non-service, yet you have engaged with other entities and worked with other entities with the same group? Was there not a question that says, if we're going to do that, this has to be settled? It's not a small amount, 888 million rand.
Yeah, it's not a small amount, we accept that, but we are dealing here with two transactions that are different. One is subscribing
Four transactions. Premier Fishing, IO, Sagarmatha, and independent media.
Yes. Yeah, same group. I agree with that.
As far as I can go at the moment, thanks.
Right, I've got a couple of questions here. Paragraph 401. I just want to check, just in terms of, I mean, we know that the media, especially the print media, has suffered quite a lot in the past couple of years. If you know the weakness of this group versus Tiso, Blackstar, and Caxton, which one has fallen the most broadly? Do you know, can you remember? When you compare those three groups?
It's quite difficult because independent is unlisted. Independent is unlisted, yes. You know. Yes. So, but for all intents and purposes, if we had to do an analysis of the company, the value, you may say that the equity there is fully impaired.
Yes.
Yeah. Versus here, where there is still a 72% and 13%. In other words, in Tiso Blackstar, if you think of it, there is still 13% that is left, right?
Still
The share-
there.
Yeah, it's
And
still there. The other one
Kexton
is half,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so they are in different,
Yes.
you know, stages. I would say independent news media probably has been hit the hardest.
The hardest, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Then coming to the point then that, would you say then maybe, you know, the turnaround plan didn't work as well as it was, you know, kind of thought of or proposed?
In other
Given
words,
that
once,
the industry has fallen this part, but the paper has fallen far more.
yeah, I think here it's more to do with the focus of the strategy, because the value proposition at that time was to drive digital media quite aggressively.
Yes, yes.
You know, but it needed money to do that. It needed cash to drive that strategy.
Yes.
And I don't think they had enough capital, because then all of a sudden the environment was such that they needed to inject more working capital into maintaining the independent news media, the print side, you know, spending a lot of money instead of putting a lot more into digital and therefore growing or quickly transitioning into a new platform. I think they were slow in moving
Yeah,
into that space.
Yes, but when the PIC put money there, didn't the PIC know that they might require further capital
Not at that point.
at that point?
Not at that point. Remember, the biggest hit here, which we don't get into detail, is the government business that simply dried up in some of these companies. I think even Tiso Blackstar was hit pretty hard once it appears the new age, you know, got unfair advantage in government business, and most of these papers
Yeah.
that depended on government suffered quite
Yeah.
severely.
Okay, so you don't think that maybe the problems came because of other things besides the industry and maybe the government business drying up, say the management of the newspaper?
I don't think there was necessarily a problem with management. I think what dried up was the actual revenues that were coming out of government advertising others, which would have given them the right kind of cash flow profile to be able to drive that digital strategy. You know, so
Yeah, so in summary then, what could you say what went wrong with the PIC investment in this?
I would
in
say,
this
I would say by and large, it's dependence on government, because the idea was to transform independent news media into a black-owned transformed company, and therefore stood a much stronger chance to get more government business in that way, you know. But then there was this new one that got formed, and probably because of this other dispute, all the business was taken away, and it suffocated in a way.
Okay, so the biggest part of the plan was to get more government business.
Because it
Is
was
that-
now the most transformed organization in the media industry at that time.
Okay, all right. And then in 4.2, just in terms of the working capital, you are saying that SIH was supplying working capital. Isn't it some role of the shareholders to supply working capital, not only one group? I mean, if a company needs working capital, doesn't it go to a bank? If the bank cannot supply, then the shareholders supply the working capital?
That's correct. So we haven't seen a rights issue from them, or them requesting requesting PIC for working capital. But they have, Sekunjalo has kept the company running, by
Yeah.
spending its own money on it.
Yes, it's quite strange, because when I asked the question, they did say that, but I was just wondering that why don't you do something about it? Like, as you say, a rights issue, or call in the shareholders to supply the capital.
Yeah.
Huh? I mean, it's quite strange that one shareholder says they are carrying the burden of supplying the working capital, but I wonder whether they approach the PIC about this.
They've highlighted that, but not formally. But even if they did, I don't know. I don't think it would have been supported, really. It would be hard for PIC to put more money. More so the media reports and the spotlight that this had created, I don't think there would have been a possibility of additional funding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Whether it's working capital or a
Or
rights
any
issues.
other, or any other form, I don't believe that would be approved. Yeah. Or
But
supported.
Yeah, but then, I mean, then what is next? I mean, if the PIC doesn't want to support the company, what happens? What's next?
Would
There's a
have-
default letter and all, you know, so, I mean, there's a, you know,
Yeah.
there's a problem here which needs to be solved. So how does it get solved properly?
These discussions, as we said, happened, you know, in 2017 already, around September, anticipating this situation where they are able to pay. And that's when they introduced this Sagarmatha, that it would be a solution because they are packaging a new platform, technology platform, which will allow the PIC a conversion into a new entity in the listed space with probably better prospects of success because it's expanding also in the continent and it's giving the PIC a much better exposure to digital platform. That's the proposal around Sagarmatha.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's gone now, so what has got to, you know, something has got to be done and, you know, probably soon because this thing has been going on for a while.
I assume the legal agreements in the PIC will, some show there are provisions as to how this can be remedied or what sort of plan can be put in place. You know. Yeah. I think the PIC will have to decide on when their options.
The shareholders, I think.
And the shareholders, and weigh their
the
options.
shareholders.
Yeah. Because you also have the Chinese that are in the same situation as the PIC. We are not alone there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
The PIC is not alone.
Yeah. And then the final question is on 401 again, just in terms of maybe the last sentence or the second one, social returns. I strongly believe that the investment facilitated transformation and localization. And then the next one, it is contributing to democracy. And all. Just expand on it, please.
I think
can you expand on that one?
It's really very important. I mean, media plays an important role in the economy.
Yes.
You know, we probably ignore their role in the economy. You know, what they report, you know, about events in the economy, you know, talking about interest rates, cuts or increases, inflation, you know, new jobs, you know, the rand collapsing if sometimes they do that. All of those are important for for consumption, you know, and investments as well. You know, so different role players will depend on media for information, and therefore in economic decisions, you know, will be informed by information that comes out of media, you know.
Yeah.
And so the role that it plays is critical, whether it's reporting on politics that have impact on the economy or pure economics, you know, to keep the nation informed of what is happening around them, and therefore the nation making economic decisions with that information.
Yes.
All of those put together are driving economic activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, some comment there, because some people say that paper, they have changed much, and, you know, the news are not independent. And, you know, some like it because it has taken a different slant. Some don't like the papers and all that. You know, what's your comment on that?
Look, I don't have a comment, but I expect them to play a role in the economy. There are other competing newspapers that are writing. There is, you know, other forms of media, Media 24 and many others, digital media, all of them informing the nation in different ways. Some may inform the truth, some, you know, not necessarily, and so all of those, I mean, newspapers are playing the role, in other words, you know, as long as they play their role. I'm sure there are checks and balances, there are, you know, the ombudsman that will also monitor the conduct if people have a problem with the biasness that it is reporting, but the fact of the matter is it's there in the economy, it's playing a certain role in the economy, you know. And I think, and it's transformed, I think that's the achievement that we can claim, you know, insofar as this is concerned.
Yes, and it has like chosen a role it wants to play. Is that
That's
what you're saying? And the others are playing their roles, and you're saying whatever they've chosen is what they've chosen.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Given the points you've just made about the importance, the critical importance of media and an informed citizenry, did the PIC, when considering this question of supporting independent media, consider what your media support strategy would be? Because the question for me is a wide range of views and informed citizenry coming from different angles. Is it something that you said, we need to look at transformation in the media, we need to ensure that it's relevant, and therefore we will have this strategy across the board to support media, whether it is print media, digital media, social media, SABC, whatever, to ensure that there is an understanding from an informed citizenry? Because the points you make are absolutely valid about an informed citizenry. The question I have is, in that informed citizenry, you have chosen one entity, one group to say that's where we're going to put our support.
Yes.
And that is an investment opportunity. Everybody else was also in the same boat, as you yourself have said. There was serious hit on many of the news agencies and the different media outlets. Did the PIC, in considering this, look at a communication, how to support an informed citizenry through the media, or did you just look at the second Jalo Group independent media as that deal with perhaps an added voice, a sustained voice in that regard? Because to me it's a really different question if we're saying we're supporting the need for democracy and an informed citizenry to supporting a particular group that is then not servicing its debt and that is condoned for 5 years because it's having difficulties. They're all having difficulties.
Commissioner, first, this is an investment and it's in the media space, and it's not the only investment in the media space that we hold. We hold NASPES, we hold TISO Black Star.
Sorry, NASPES and TISO would be listed.
Would be listed.
Yeah.
I don't think we necessarily differentiate. It remains an asset. It's unlisted because we got it unlisted from the Irish. But it was about transformation and adding a new player, black-controlled newspaper, into the mix to drive that democracy.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, if there's no more questions, this is the business for the day.
Right, let's adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow morning.